Welcome, everybody. We are here to talk about the metabolic microbiome and also our products, the Metabolic µBiomic and the Metabolic Superfood. But prior to getting to that, I'm going to let Matt do a little introduction, and we will get into some science as well as some clinical applications. But joining us, I should mention, is Matt, one of the cells representatives, and Derek, the genomics professional or the genomics scientist. He has an official title, but that's what I refer to him as. And we're going to go over some of this. Hopefully, we'll catch some things in the chats that you may want to know about. But this is one of the most exciting projects we've launched because it's so applicable to the microbiome. And one of the main issues we have with the microbiome is our metabolic dysfunction, and it's impacting all of us. I mean, it's becoming a global problem, so it'll be fun to jump into this. But without further ado, I'm going to let Matt do a little intro.
We knew this was coming for a while.
So we did, yeah.
We've been creating a lot of IP for this. This is some of the stuff that we've seen entire companies build. Everything that they've made was built off of this alone, right? There's a lot of people that say GLP-1. Some of them they got famous actors that are promoting their products that are doing GLP-1 this, GLP-1 that, probiotic this. So we actually went and made a whole social media and we made a bunch of graphics, made some social media content for you to use that you can use, email copy that we have to send out. We created the white papers for this. In fact, Derek was a big part of that as he was throwing that together. That was it was a problem. Every one of those ingredients has research behind it. And so, these guys threw it together and made sure that the science is strong. There is no guesswork with this stuff. It just does what it does because the science says so. So stay tuned, because at the end of this too, I have some things that I'm going to let you guys know. So at the end, we're going to have a little deal that I'll let you know about, and then some cool ongoings that Shane's been, basically putting in the work. So
we're always trying to bring you guys new stuff. So that being said, let's jump into the program. All right. Metabolic microbiome reset. Now, we can use a number of names to describe what's happening, but one of the most fundamental issues regarding the microbiome is it's intimately linked with the metabolic processes. Now, these are things that how we metabolize and store sugar, lipids, how our hormones respond to each of these from the time we ingest food to where and how we store them, whether we convert them into energy or whether we sock them away as future resources. These are all intimately tied to the microbiome. So the basis for this and really the breadth of literature is clear about how our metabolism is dictated, if not majorly controlled, by the microbiome that sits within our gut, within the small intestine, through the large intestine, and even the oral microbiome. So this is a really critical piece that is just coming out, and is something that we've been, as Matt said, we've put a lot of time and effort into this. And there are other people that recognize that this is a real science that is establishing a new dynamic, a new way to approach all of these metabolic issues, which are becoming what we call chronic issues globally in industrialized worlds. Because of that, we wanted to set you up with a little bit of data. So let's talk about the objectives. So we want to go through the pathogenesis. What does it mean? When we think of metabolic dysbiosis or metabolic pathogenesis, what does that mean to us? What is that defined as? We have things like type 2 diabetes and we'll get into that. We want to now link, after that, we'll link the microbes and the metabolism. We'll get into some of the science behind it. And then we'll end up going through clinical applications for each of you to really bring this to the clinic and actually get this to your patients in a very effective, yet hopefully educational way with all the tools that have been built. And then we'll leave you with a protocol and a few surprises along the way. But let's spend a little time on the pathology of it all. So we've known for a long time about metabolic issues, metabolic diseases, and really the impact they have on not only the person, but the society at large. We have a growing problem with type 2 diabetes, obesity, and obesity has been in the mainstream for a bit now based on GLP-1, and we can touch on that in a minute. We have cardiovascular disease. We have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I should mention here that the pancreatitis that's 2 more down, when you have non-fatty liver disease, which can be measured through some of the blood testing or other tests that you may employ in your clinic, there's pretty clear evidence that having non-fatty liver disease also means that you're a high likelihood of having what we call non-alcoholic fatty pancreatic disease. So the liver and the pancreas seem to be tied to the same etiology. So when you have the data supporting some liver issues, you also need to take into consideration the pancreas is likely following suit. It just isn't measured. No one's looking for it, but it is happening. It's an emerging area where the pancreas is also getting fat built around it. Autoimmune diseases, they're all linked to this metabolic process, to be clear. When you think of the ideas of us establishing the immune system responses, it's directly tied to the microbiome. And, Derek can speak to this, but the autoimmune is a large category, and I threw it in this metabolic area because the hormones that reside here, the leaky gut, which gives you the potential of accessing these antigens that trigger an immune response that then can escalate into autoimmune. I mean, do you guys have anything to add to that piece? Because that's a big piece to all of these. In fact, they can all be linked back to obesity, diabetes, the liver, and the heart. Each one of those falls back to the immune system.
So yeah, we were talking about the adipokines releasing all of the inflammatory markers when you're
all the chemokines, adipokines.
In general, that'll basically wreak havoc on all these things. And
I mean, that's a great point. When you think of obesity, when obesity rises and keeps rising, you're essentially going to be in a constant state of inflammation at that point.
Right.
I mean, all the adipokines in there, and a lot of adipose tissue, which you may well know, it not only produces these chemokines, these adipokines, these otherwise, some neurotransmitters, they produce other hormones. So adipose tissue can raise estrogen levels. It can raise other, DHEA and all these precursors, which can lead to these really massive fluctuations in people. And certain genetics tie back to this. Certainly the microbiome is a critical part of this, but as these hormones fluctuate, this is partly contributing to how your patients feel. So even as they might be addressing their obesity, until those hormones are back in control, you can have good days and bad days, which really means that they have a hard time maintaining, let's say, a protocol when any given day, the protocol doesn't make them feel better that day, but then the next day as they keep moving on. And you've seen this in diets. Some diets do that to you, where you'll see a benefit and then all of a sudden that benefit will wane. Mm-hmm. And you'll want to really stay on track. And again, I'm going to say this multiple times, but the microbiome is central to all of these conditions and all of these benefits, these clinical interventions that we're going to talk about. And not to mention things like IBD, IBS, leaky gut, dysbiosis. And just so you know, that's a term that what you'll keep hearing, and what it defines is it's not actually a condition of your physiology, it's a condition of the microbiome. When a microbiome is not in a healthy state, we call that dysbiosis. And that can be measured by using the blue poop pill. It can be measured by symptomology, and it can also be measured by what we call microbiome testing. And then certainly the hormone and sleep. Sleep is impacted by everything above. And when sleep is off, it's a dysregulator for all of these things, for all of the autoimmune, all of the metabolic issues. Sleep is a critical component to that.
And many of these turn into a negative feedback cycle. Like one thing leads to another, and that's why all these things, like it seems like there's a lot of things here. That's because they all, like you said, they all tie together. They all perturb each other, make each other unhappy. And that's why you see so much inflammation, so much disease and feeling of unwellness. So
you get overweight, hurts the microbiome. Now you have a bad microbiome, you gain more weight.
Yep.
Right. Hurts the microbiome.
Now your hormones fall. Now you impact your hormones. Now also you're impacting your liver processing, your leaky gut. Yeah, it is this very interwoven web, and we'll get into some of the science in a minute to help you guys understand why we're so excited. It's incredibly exciting to present this to you guys, because when you look at these things, and the reasons these have been such a conundrum for wellness, natural products, and even what we call westernized medicine. The reason this has been so difficult to overcome is the connectivity. When someone's being treated for type 2 diabetes and they're not looking at the bigger picture, they're really not, they're looking at symptom or they're dealing with a single, trying to isolate the problem. We're trying to dissect it down to a single problem, which isn't the case. And the web is being held together by the microbiome. That's the exciting piece, is that it isn't just the liver, it isn't just the heart, it isn't just the leaky gut. The microbiome connects all of these things, which is why we're so excited about these products, because they're unprecedented. They help us. The microbiome is able to generate interactions to every organ in our body. And that's the brilliance of why the microbiome is central to our journey, to our mission.
If you want paperwork on that, I have a paper that we made that has all the 12 organ axes, and it kind of gives you a layman's term about how the microbiome runs every single one. I got a paper. So if anybody wants it, just reach out to your rep or just respond to @Systemic Formulas support at systemicformulas.com.
And if you keep joining us, these little nuggets of information, they're going to keep coming, because I think Derek pointed out, I think this morning, that the microbiome is also really central to how we process and benefit from things like herbs or spices or other nutrients. If your microbiome isn't in play, then herbal interventions or high dose vitamins don't do their job, because the microbiome can actually destroy these things in the process. If you have the wrong microbiome, you're not getting the benefit of herbal interventions, protein, amino acid, which creates neurotransmitters and other compounds. And finally, just your daily mineral and vitamins can be derailed by a poor functioning microbiome. So it is absolutely critical. And as we continue to tell the story, and I love telling it, that when it's healthy, all the other things you're consuming and doing, your exercise, etc., benefits the microbiome. The microbiome benefits us. So it is a big story. So more of a complicated slide, but I wanted you guys to save some of these slides. And Taylor, who is, of course, helping us host this, he will be able to make this available to you. But when you think of all these metabolic issues, the science behind them is really, really refined. I mean, the mechanism stuff has been really worked out in so many cases. And, we can quickly just talk about GLP-1, right? It's been the focus of pharmaceuticals. It's been the focus of all these, maybe nutraceuticals as well. And we know that GLP-1 is a natural hormone produced by L cells in the intestines. And those L cells then create satiety, but it doesn't work alone. So all this focus on one hormone is really missing, again, the picture. We're trying to isolate a single mechanism when it's really a broader picture. So for your patients, you as clinicians need to know that a graph like this is how complicated it is, but we can really trim it down to what creates the interactions. Well, clearly it's our diet associated with our microbiota, which then helps design and release these hormones in a normal, natural way. And we have good evidence for that in areas where they don't suffer from obesity. You look at their microbiomes, they are much more healthy than Western microbiomes. They produce high levels of GLP-1 and PYY and so on, and that manages their metabolic processes much better than industrialized nations. It's quite clear. There's really no argument there. They don't suffer from these chronic autoimmune diseases in those areas. So how do we go back to that? Well, we start with the microbiome. And you can see where on this chart here, look, as you're looking at it, everything in red is what we consider disease states. And it begins in the gut, where if you have too much intake of saturated fatty acids or protein that you're not metabolizing, sugar, of course, including fructose and glucose and sucrose. And then we start looking at what that does to the microbiome. That increases the types of metabolites that are dangerous or toxic that create leaky gut. You'll see these listed as like LPS, TMAO. You start then getting inflammation. And then, of course, that, as we mentioned, really spirals into these disease states or these syndromes or these other characteristics of immune dysfunction and so on, all around metabolic processing. But if you're doing it properly, you reverse these things. These are not an inevitable outcome for us. We can reverse them in the microbiome is perfect because it's dynamic. It's plastic. We can change it over the course of months and then years. It's a beautiful organ that we can bring back to health. So as you guys get this later, I know it's a lot to digest right now, but you can see where yeah, go ahead.
No, you said digest. I just thought it was funny.
Oh, digest. Yeah. So as you digest this later, yeah, pun intended, actually. We generate from the microbiome a ton of antioxidants and these short chain fatty acids, and we metabolize herbs into amazing compounds, spices, even really healthy grains and things that we've been afraid of, or polyunsaturated fatty acids are converted into these amazing compounds. It's all about clean intake to generate clean output. And that's the game here. That's what we want to establish with the clinicians, that then leads to the patient's benefits across the board.
A lot of my practitioners too, they already know, okay, so diet, lifestyle, supplements, right? That's like the big three. I have a lot of practitioners that say, hey, if I want to raise GLP-1, I eat more protein, I eat more fiber. And then they'll be like, well, I got them on these really high fiber diets, but they seem to be having diarrhea, but they're even hungrier.
Right.
And that is because of your microbiome, right? The microbiome has to be set in place first to be able to take on these foods so that it can correctly cause all these cascades to work correctly. So it could lower your appetite, right? If your microbiome is unhealthy and then you just start eating high fiber and high protein, you're going to have a harder time having them respond well to the appetite suppressancy of what high protein does and what high fiber does.
Yeah, we're not prepared for it. I mean, Derek's seeing that in some of Derek also conducts our in-house observational or clinical studies as well. And we see that if we shift somebody from a poor diet, when we want to address these issues with them, they shift quickly into high fiber, high probiotic intake, because we know we've got extinction events in our gut that we need to rebuild. They're not ready for it. He's exactly right. We shift them and now they're bloating, they're gassing, they're cramping, they're unhappy and they don't want to stick to the program. There's a lot of rhetoric on social media and in other platforms where, probiotics aren't working or my fiber's not working. So I want to go back to, the way I used to eat when I felt better. The feel better part is a process of the neurotransmitters, right? There are foods designed to stimulate eating more sugar. We know that. We know it's addictive. We know other types of foods can be that way, especially if you mix certain kinds of fats and sugar together. They're highly addictive. Your brain feels better, but your body is a wreck from it, and eventually your brain will catch up. So we need to maneuver this in a very careful way, but the outcomes are brilliant. You don't have to be afraid of moving them slowly through the tough times to get to the end game, which once you get there, you've transformed them now. Now they're doing well. They've changed their lifestyle because of it. And now the microbiome's happy, and it will benefit you in ways that we're just still unraveling these benefits. So it is critical that during your protocoling and during your clinical work, you're moving each patient through in a very personalized way, depending on how they respond to things. And we see that all the time. So what are the mechanisms? You guys, I know not all of you love mechanisms, but there's a few slides I have here that I simply want to touch on briefly, but they become a reference for you later. So the mechanisms in which this works are, we have a giant metabolic effect. There are a number of animal studies and a few human where the animals are quite dramatic, where you take an obese animal and you do a fecal transplant from a thin animal, from a very, thin, robust, healthy animal that lacks cardiovascular disease, lacks type 2 diabetes, essentially, and you replace its microbiome, that animal thins. And the offspring from that animal remain thin. Now, the reciprocal is also true. If you take a thin animal and do a fecal transplant, or a sterile animal and give them a microbiome from an obese animal, they become obese. Their diet doesn't change. They don't add more calories. They don't burn more calories. Everything is held constant. Microbiome will drive obesity or drive fitness, depending on what microbiome you have. In animal models, that's starting to be looked at more closely in human models as well, because microbiome regulates your fat. When you think about food intake, the first organ that processes everything you eat is the microbiome, and it converts it into things that then enter your bloodstream and become available to us. But the microbiome touches it all first. And so we know it's involved in inflammation, metabolism. Satiety hormones are driven by the microbiome, without a doubt. Do you guys have anything to add on this?
This part is the why. So if you get a client that comes to you and says, well, why should I do this with you? This can be why it's working, because it's hard to argue when you have the science where it's just like, well, this is what it's doing, right? You're not giving them some magic, now go home and hope, right?
Yeah.
This is science. And this is something that's the mechanisms, but everyone's selling GLP-1. We have something different.
Yeah.
Like we have things that nobody else has. And these guys can really get into that because he's been dealing with these. He's been actually dealing with actual poop for the longest period of time. Looking at this thing, Mike in the lab has been dealing with poop. We have species of these bacteria, that are totally different than any GLP-1 product that you will find on the market, as well as the prebiotic that you made, which I don't even know how we're making money on that thing with how much ingredient is in there. Like I've seen prebiotics on the market giving you about 1 gram, right? And it comes with a probiotic, right? You put about 10 grams in there, which is like you're talking 10 to 50 times larger than most supplements are putting in their products for prebiotics, because he knows what the actual dose is and cares about the outcome more than the, hey, I got to make money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's all about functionality and actually curing your patient.
Not all fiber is created equal, right? Like there's cheap fiber. You can put a bunch of cellulose sawdust in your thing and be like, oh, this is a fiber, but the good bugs can't eat that stuff. So like in the metabolic superfood, there's probably 20 different ingredients. And if you look at them, like nothing contains those ingredients. You can't just go out and just buy one of those ingredients on your own.
Yeah.
Again, good luck.
Very unique. Yeah, unique. And he's right, because some fibers, there's been work now done on the prebiotics. Probiotics that can be complex probiotics or one probiotic. There's a benefit on both of those. Probiotics have shown clinical benefits, whether it's one organism or 20 organisms. They both have varying phases of benefits. However, prebiotics can actually be detrimental. So if someone is daily taking inulin or daily taking GOS or a single prebiotic, that will actually drive the organisms that can live off that to grow more than organisms that need diversity. So we've always been about diversity, getting the good bugs all there at the population they need to be, right? It's a rainforest. We don't want a single plant overgrowing the rainforest. We want to feed them all. And the data is pretty clear that prebiotics that are fairly simplistic can drive the growth of microbes in an unhealthy fashion. But multiple probiotics don't seem to have that same effect. They seem to all colonize when they need to and how they need to when you feed them. So that's another important conversation you have with your patients, because they're hearing a lot of stuff in the world about probiotics and prebiotics. And we need to take a step back and use the data to drive our conversations with them. There's a lot of great data, and the rhetoric doesn't support that necessarily.
I'd say right now, at worst, you're monoculturing. And at best, you're paying for a prebiotic with another company that doesn't even have the doses high enough to even do anything to the microbiome.
Yeah.
Which is why he put them, because it was like 9 grams or something in a lot of the research, where you have to have a certain dose for it to actually do something in the microbiome. So you're either blowing money away or you're monoculturing with a lot of these companies that just absolutely get it out the door. So
anytime you see a probiotic that's in a capsule, and you take one, it's a probiotic and a prebiotic mix, which is, by the way, is called a synbiotic. When it's only a capsule dose, that is not even close to being an effective prebiotic. The probiotic may be fantastic in that capsule, but you need grams of that. So you need to take half of a bottle of capsules to achieve a prebiotic effect, which is why most prebiotics good prebiotics are it's a scoopful. One capsule won't cut it. So when you see those products, they're definitely using the science in a misdirected way. Probiotics you can fit a capsule, but prebiotics you cannot. They need to be in a gram format. So a satchel or a big scoop.
Otherwise, it's kind of like eating a quarter of a dried strawberry.
Yeah,
that's enough. That's enough.
I took a bite of a strawberry today. That should be that's a good point. So little mechanistic stuff. This I just wanted to simply say that. We've been doing our research, you've heard about it. And although today is about metabolism and the metabolic impacts of the microbiome, again, the science is clear about what our microbes are in charge of and how they are a critical organ that is in charge of many other aspects of our entire physiology and our health and lifestyle. So this is a quick graphic you can see that The science has supported its interaction with heart disease, inflammation, liver, kidney, brain, of course, metabolism and respiratory, and it goes on. I mean, I think Matt just a minute ago mentioned just the plethora of people that are worrying about GLP-1 and taking agonists or, directly. One, that is GLP-1 can be controlled through microbiota and prebiotic supplementation. Absolutely. It always has been. GLP-1 is a hormone that has been controlled by that system for millennia. It's a natural system that we control. Furthermore, what's coming out of the clinical work regarding our hormones that are produced by our microbial and our intestinal interactions is that people that take a GLP-1 inhibitor don't get the benefit when their microbiota is in dysbiosis or a wreck. So that's why we have these conflicting people that get on these things. Some benefit through weight loss, some don't. And that's tied to the microbiota. Even in taking these things, these interventions, if the microbiota is not healthy, they're not achieving the same benefit as someone that's trying to improve their microbiota. So when you see your patients, that's another conversation that they want the quick fix. They've seen their friends benefit. Great. But the microbiota still makes that happen or not happen in a really effective way, which is why we do what we do. So the microbiota is certainly central. This kind of reminds you guys of that.
And we always do. All of our protocols, by the way, they always fix the microbiome first because we do genetics too. But some of the genetics products we do add to it, but we're always focusing on fixing the microbiome first because right now we're talking about GLP-1, right? And how, if you have bad microbiome, GLP-1 is useless to you, right? So we fix the microbiome first, right? And then we colonize you with bugs and do all the cool stuff. That goes for all the other ones that we're correcting too, because we have a product that goes with each health system, the brain, for instance, right? You want to fix the brain, fix the microbiome first. Like everything starts there, and you'll see that towards the end here that we have protocols for you that will have that same concept behind it.
And that we call that the holobiome concept because we have our own genetics, our own physiology, and our microbiome. And if you connect all those, then every intervention that we've ever used through the history of human interactions, like our herbs, our environmental exposures, having animals living in the wild, all of those connect through our genetics, our physiology, and our microbiome. They're all very intimately interconnected. And we've spent the last 100 years breaking that connection. So that's kind of our holobiome approach. Now, I'm not going to go through this for you all because I can see, it's a lot to digest. But again, I want you to take this, print this off later, and just recognize that the words that are coming out about the description of how the microbiome is so impactful on our health or disease, it's because of all the jobs that it is doing. This slide represents a small snapshot of the interactions that are happening every minute between your microbiome and your body. And you can see how it's impacting our satiety or our health of energy harvest or our liver health, our kidney health, our brain. And this has been worked out. So the really exciting bit of this science is many of these systems are not just hypothetical anymore. They are absolutely have been demonstrated through animal, first cells, animals, and now into humans. This is the power behind this holobiome journey. It is a journey that everybody will be on in the next 20 years. This is where we're going to recapture all of our health through this type of journey. And you can see how powerful the microbiome is in so many aspects. And that this slide is. So I really encourage you to print this off and look at how we now know it's not just a guess. We know of all the interrelationships between bugs. And we'll get into some of the specific bugs because the brilliance of all of your world is there are bugs in our bodies. Some are gone, some are still there, but we want to bring back these bugs that really have a specific job. When you think of a community, some of the bugs in your body are doing a very specific key job in your body. And when you lose that bug, you lose that key function. This is part of this journey where we bring these what we call key probiotics back, or next gen keystone organisms that have gone missing. And that's what's led us down this path to not doing the job that your liver needed or your brain needed or your gut needed. These are really amazing jobs. So I'm going to let these guys do more here because they're as excited about it as I am. But here we go. Metabolic Superfood and Metabolic µBiomic.
So for a lot. He's been doing a test with these right now. We have, there's like what, 12 people in it right now, or probably even
20, 25 or 30
that are doing this program. One of them is actually somebody that came off of GLP-1 medication. I think it was Manjaro. And she's been taking this as something to keep everything, all the benefits that she did do on her GLP-1 medication has been staying there, and she's been losing more weight with this, even though she's technically slowing down off the Manjaro. So we have like anecdotes here that are ridiculous. These bacteria that are in that metabolic µBiomic, like we were saying, he was calling them keystone species. You can't find those. Like we do have the transients. We have the,
we have lactobacilli and bifido, yeah.
Right. But the ones that are in there are so unique to us. In fact, they were made by Mike.
Yeah.
Right. No one else has these bacteria, right? There's companies that make some keystone species now. I'd say on the market, there might be 7 strains available, and one company sells 5 of them.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are just a species called Acromyzium eosinophila, which we have, but we have way more than that. We have the prebiotics that are feeding those bacteria. And once those bacteria colonize you, think of them as your little factories now that are going to live in you and, take you on as a host and make all these benefits happen. So you get these long-term benefits from our probiotics. Whereas if you go to your, grocery store, your natural grocery store, and get a lactobacillus or I'm drinking kefir, you're not going to keep these benefits long-term, because these ones are ones that we're actually giving you that you never had. Right. Whereas the ones that you get from fermented foods, they're going in, doing a cool thing, but they're leaving after a certain period of time, most of them. Right. And so what we do with this is a long-term correction. Right. Same with the neuro products. Same with the we don't want to have to sit here and farm people on probiotics for the rest of their life, because we want to colonize you and then move on to something else that they might be worried about. Right. So let's say, hey, now I want to, work on my brain. I want to work on my skin. Right. This one here is the 1-2 punch. There's actually a full kit that this is going to have, that we have 5 bottles for. It's a, metabolic, I can't remember what you call it.
Metabolic protocol kit. Yeah.
But it'll take into account the microbiome, because we're talking about no single herb will outcompete what you can do with the microbiome. If you had to go and pick out supplements like power levels or like how strong a supplement is, the probiotics are going to be the strongest thing, because we know how much they affect physiology, right? And then you add the herbs and the single herbs and stuff like that. For us, we go a step further and add the herbs, but we take those herbs and use it nutrigenomically with the formulas that you've made that turn on and off genes, so we can know the cascade and have them interact with the microbiome again. And then it's this cool, nice feeding of,
Yeah. It's a true approach to how our bodies function and need to function, and how we deal with our food, our exercise, and our society. I mean, we've lost all that. So what he's described is exactly what our mission is. So these 2 products, and I'm going to go to the next slide, but before I do, just to refresh your memory, the superfood is the food that feeds the probiotics. The µBiomic are the capsules that contain the probiotics. And they were developed simultaneously. So every pre and pro we have are developed in conjunction with each other. So we have the immune and the immune superfood. We have the neuro, pro, and pre. And you'll notice that throughout that our catalog, they are developed together, because you want to, without feeding them, they become transient. We'll lose them. If you're not feeding them the right food, you'll lose them. When we adjust our diets, we can lose some. So we got to get them back and start managing that in a very personal level. We see that, recently with going from omnivore to carnivore, you'll lose organisms. If you go from carnivore to vegetarian, you'll lose organisms. And so it's a balancing where you want to build that diversity for your body. And it's a really fun aspect to what we do.
Every probiotic is called µBiomic. Every prebiotic is called superfood. And you always take the pill with the powder at the same time. So it'll be 2 pills. You take 2 pills a day for the probiotic, and then you take 1 scoop in any of your favorite liquids and just drink them down, drink them together at the same time.
And Derek's helped make them much more tasty. In fact, everybody's loving the flavor of this metabolic that we've messed with.
A slight chocolate flavor.
Yeah, subtle chocolate. And one of the nuances we'll get into, because I didn't list a lot of the ingredients from the superfood on the slide, but I think Matt mentioned that we have a lot of unique ingredients. And instead of considering just the plant-based polysaccharides with the metabolic superfood, we are looking at the human-based polysaccharides. So you're going to see things like mucin, chondroitin, and similar compounds that are based on what some of these bugs need from us. And when we don't produce enough, like when our mucin layer thins, now we're at risk for certain conditions. Like, for example, everybody knows about H. pylori. H. pylori is a very amazing commensal organism for most of us, but those that have destroyed their mucin layer in their stomach, their mucus layer, H. pylori becomes a problem and it needs to be dealt with. But for the vast majority of the population, H. pylori is commensal. It lives in people and actually benefits us when we are healthy, when we have a very dynamic microbiome and diet and lifestyle. H. pylori is not a problem. In fact, a lot of the scientific world has started changing its behavior towards that organism because it isn't the pathogen that we once thought it was. So these are the things we need to start doing to educate and get better at turning this microbiome around. Yeah. So here's a list of them. Derek's written up, on the white paper. Please reach out and get the white paper that Derek has created. It's phenomenal. It's a lot of reading, but it's phenomenal. And here's the keystone organisms that we have in the metabolic micro.
Right, and the one that's probably most out in the world now is the Akkermansia. And you see here we have the two strains of it, commercial form and our own proprietary strain. So the way you can think of it is Akkermansia plus 5. There's 5 more keystone probiotics in here that nobody else has. And why does nobody else have these, Shane?
Because it took us about 10 years to isolate, grow, and then grow at scale, right? So each of those steps took many, many years to go. They didn't want to grow outside of our body. So we had to create conditions in which they would, and then we had to feed them. And that's why every one of these has a corresponding prebiotic, because all these organisms need specialized food to grow. And right. That's taken us over a decade.
Right. Most probiotics have lactobacillus or bifidobacterium, and both of those grow in milk. They make your cheese, they make your yogurts. They're super easy to grow, and that's what everybody puts in. These are extremely difficult to grow. That's why they aren't for sale anywhere else, but they're the ones that we're losing. Like, I've seen studies just recently that showed that by the age of 50, people have lost 90 to 100% of their Akkermansia. So it's just it could be a Western diet thing. It could just be an aging thing. We haven't really figured that out yet, like the interplay. But the truth is, like, by living here in the United States, you're taking this, or you're just living your normal life. Those are dying off.
Yeah. We're not feeding them. Yeah. And exposure to things, this is why we're really big on detoxification as well as other things, because organisms you can kill them, and exposure to things will kill them. So it's another webinar for another time, but it's also why we're on this journey, because replacing these guys is critical for where we live, who we are, and how we want to rebuild them. We need to be considering all of the impacts on our microbiome. There's a list of bullet points to the right. We've spoken to these. I think we've touched on each one of these things. These are the protecting and the benefiting aspects of the metabolic µBiomic and superfood. We want all of these things to be reestablished because we know patients are suffering from these issues. So that's the key to our metabolic. And he's pointed out it's absolutely unprecedented. It's a very unique formulation. You can confidently give it with not only the scientific backing, but the fact that we stand behind it, and we are going to be getting this out into the world with you guys every day. And we're doing studies internally right now on these products still. So this is just the beginning of how we're going to transform this part of our journey on the holobiome. So we are absolutely committed to doing this. Now, I picked out a few things on the metabolic superfood, and I kind of pointed some of these out. There's many, many more ingredients, but we have a number of what we call polysaccharides or oligosaccharides that are human-based, meaning that they're animal. They're like animal-based. The N-acetyl-D-glucosamine, the chondroitin, and the mucin. We were able to get chitosan from mushroom. Because the other version is shellfish, and we wanted to avoid any of those people that have allergic responses.
It's not just plant fiber.
It's not just plant fiber. These are fibers that are unique, and they feed the microbiome uniquely. And I think it's been uniquely speaking to this, we're all fairly well versed on this idea of plant fiber feeds the microbiome. I think everybody's telling that story. not always correctly, but they're at least on the right track. Where we wanted to introduce the metabolic superfood is we're not only using plant fibers to do it, we wanted to start taking advantage of these human-based or these animal-based fibers, which are critical, and we don't consider that. The whole mucosal membranes from our mouth, our salivary glands, all the way down through the entire journey of your GI tract, we produce food for our microbiome. It's not just what we are also producing these compounds that we need to stimulate more production of. We need the mucus, the mucins, we need the chitosan to feed bugs that don't eat plant fiber. They eat fiber that we provide, right? We're providing a home for them. This is another, as Matt put it, a unique application of prebiotics that no one else is considering. We are the only people considering the animal-based fibers.
Right.
And it's really, I mean, we're so excited to bring this to you guys because all these considerations can be used to really grow and bring in much healthier outcomes to your patients. It really is an unprecedented approach to the microbiome. And that's key for me. I don't know about if you guys had anything more about that. What's the protocol? What do we want you guys to do to get on this track? Well, we have the genic formulas. So these are oftentimes called cellular. We call them the genics now because they are tied to our genetic makeup as well as our cellular demands. So we have in this formula protocol, we have the energetic, glucogenic, electrogenic. Now there's the little mystery one below, and we just wanted to plug this for you guys in the future. We're coming out with a new one here that we will introduce later, and it's probably one of the more. I think it's going to be a uniquely epigenic. There's going to be a epigenetic component to all this. And people aren't really approaching it from the methylation world is great, but it's not the entire story. So we're bringing you the entire story here in the near future. The biomic formulas, we got Metabolic µBiomic and Metabolic Superfood. And then we want to, of course, remind everybody about flexible diets, diet plasticity. We have DNA testing to help tease out some of the ways you can leverage. Some people are better at metabolizing carbohydrates or fibers than others. Some are better at metabolizing lipids than others. Right. So it can kind of give you some insights as to why some people do well on a ketogenic diet for a while and some people don't. These are all can be really teased out of our DNA. Of course, modified exercise, fermented foods are always a great introduction into the protocol. And then you rotate pros and pres diets, and then you personalize them to your patients. And that's all part of the metabolic protocol.
And every month, so this is metabolic protocol. This would be a month, right? And you would take the pre and probiotic, and then notice how you mentioned the genetic ones, because we're going to do genetics and microbiome. So your pre and probiotic you take together, and then you would add the energenic, the glucogenic, right? Because those are all for metabolism and weight loss and blood sugar control and pretty much everything that we spoke about today. And then that new one that's coming out, that one has got a lot of good reviews so far for anybody who's tried it. It smells a little bit, but you definitely feel it. I'll tell you that. Like, you definitely feel it. Don't take it outside the pill.
Yeah.
But this is a month protocol. And so you can technically, like, once you've considered someone's metabolism and you've corrected their metabolism, you could do another protocol called the cardiovascular one. And we're going to have 12 of these made up for you. So you could just jump through each of the protocols and they'll be pre-made with the 5 bottles that you're going to take, or 5 or 6 per month. And you can cycle, like you said, rotate through all of them. And while you're doing that, take the DNA test or a poop test that Derek's working on. And that'll even tell you, hey, you're missing the species. So go take, instead of doing the cardiometabolic one next, right? You could take this probiotic next because we looked in the poop and we know you're missing it. Or you got these genes, even though RPM isn't in this protocol, your genes say you should probably take this too. Or
indeed,
you can customize the protocol based on that too. Yeah. But you're going to get 90% of the way there just doing our kits in order. Right. Some people may have dabbled in the roadmap already, which is a 4-month protocol that's basically made like this, where it's month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4. And I recommend everybody getting on that because you could pretty much shotgun approach most health conditions. And since it does hit genetics and the microbiome, it's it is a massive effect on human physiology. Like, I've seen them, taking care of certain problems very quickly that you would think, oh, that's not something that goes away. Right. Through manipulating genes in the microbiome. Mm-hmm.
And Derek's seen, we're doing more of this work, by the way, for you, the genetics of both human and microbiome. And just by putting people on these protocols, he's not only seen their gut diversity increase, but he's seen it increase even beyond the products we're giving or probiotics we're giving them. We've seen the introduction of new good bugs take up residency where it was an inhospitable place. New organisms show up in these healthy journeys that we didn't even put in them. They weren't part of our formulas, but they found their way in and decided to, it's a great place to live, and they were missing.
Ones we know that are good, but we have been unable to grow yet.
Yeah. They will find their way back in. And it's beautiful. It's really amazing to see that happening in actual human, stool and guts. So that's pretty exciting. So let's wrap it up. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us and being on this journey, and spread the word, tell other practitioners. We want to grow this because this is incredibly important for the future of true wellness, true holobiomic intervention, and getting back our health. We've lost it through our diet, our the exposures we've had to really not healthy compounds and so on and so forth. We need to get it back. We have a lot of partners. We have the lab work that Derek does and others. Some of that work was done at Utah State, and then everyone here. I mean, we are so grateful to be doing this with you guys. And I think Matt might even have, maybe a wrap up. I don't know if we didn't have time for questions, but we will get back to your questions really quickly. We wanted to get this out so you can start thinking about it and acting on it. And then I'll let Matt bring it to a close.
We got some good stuff for you, because obviously this is a new product launch. And we want them in your hands. We want you guys to try these things, because I guarantee these will change lives. Like, I've seen it. I've tried it myself. In fact, it was so strong on me that I took half a scoop starting out, and I was feeling it pretty good, and eventually worked my way up. Like, I titrated it.
And I was going to say, some preliminary results that we've got from our study, we haven't analyzed all of it, but I've seen some people report weight loss between 5 to 10 pounds in a month. Not huge. It's not like Ozempic, like, oh, I look like a skeleton now because I lost 100 pounds in a month. That doesn't seem super healthy.
Calories.
Yeah,
that's like
it's only changing calories because it's self-regulated. Mm-hmm. The person noticed, I usually eat this much food. I stopped eating as much. Like, I felt full at the end of my meal, and I didn't have the milkshake at the end or something.
And when you do this, you're more efficient at doing lipolysis and making sure that you can open up a fat cell in the first place to get the fatty acid out. So it's kind of a double punch.
And when you think of the hormones, that's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to stimulate the PYY and the GLP-1 to bring in satiety, so you don't have to shock your system and lose 30 pounds and then lose muscle and lose energy.
Well, because it's a starvation diet.
Yeah.
And so this is just a don't overeat diet, essentially.
Yeah. Basically, even if they didn't change their diet and they took this, you will see something happen. That's how powerful this is. Yeah. And so what we're going to do is, if you buy 4 of each of these, the pre and probiotic, so it's 1 of each, counts as 1. If you buy a pro and prebiotic and you buy 4 of them, you'll get another set for free. So technically you'll get 5 for the price of 4 sets, right? And I'm so confident that this is going to have drastic results with your patients, that if any of you send in a testimonial by video or by text or an email or something from your patients, if you send us those for our next product launch, which is pretty soon, do you know how long that's going to be until that next one comes out? Because I'm pretty sure it's already getting worked on right now.
Yeah, so it is getting worked on. So we're looking at, you may know that we're in a move. So that one's out only a month or 2 at this point. Everything, it's ready to be made. We just got to get moved and get set up in our new facility and start punching it out again. So yeah.
But when you have your patients try these, or even you guys, right? If you guys try this, you haven't tried it before, and you guys get some drastic results, let us know. Because if you do, we will give you a free bottle of that new product that's coming out that we were talking about. So keep us in the loop too. Like, even if, let's say you don't send me a testimony or whatever, call your rep. Let us know, because we still want to know how the stuff is working, because then we can tell Shane, we can tell Derek, and be like, this is what the people are saying, because we want to give you guys what the people want. We're trying to help you guys build your practice, get people healthier. So keep in communication with us at all times. We could basically consider you guys part of our R&D department, right? Because we need to know what's happening in your practice. We want to hear it. We'll talk to you. Don't be afraid. But if you email, me or your reps, there's 3 reps. There's me, Julie, or Hayden. So one of those 3, or our assistants, you can call the number at 1-800-445-4647 and press extension 1. I know we have a new bone system coming in. So I don't know if that's going to stay the same, but just get in contact with us. We'll make sure to take care of you. And even if you need help putting this into practice, because we said before that we had these graphics and this media stuff, talk to your rep. We can help you create hooks and help you create things that can build your practice. In fact, we have something else that's in the works right now that I probably should have said about, but we got something that's going to help you with that.
We'll get you excited. We don't want to get too excited too fast.
I don't want to talk too fast.
Yeah, we'll stick to the metabolic. And there's, like you mentioned, there's a journey. We created all these different pro and pres because through the course of the entire thing, it's over 100 organisms and well over 50 different types of prebiotics that you just can't get anywhere else. And the diversity quotient is maximal benefit with all that diversity. I want to answer one question real quick in the chat before we let you go. Can you use this along with other protocols? And the answer is yes. And many times people are worrying about, pathogenic. So you got viruses or yeast or parasites. In fact, the data is clear, and we've seen it internally, and you also can find it in literature that your microbiome is the first barrier to each and every one of these. When you have a healthy microbiome, it fights the fight for you as you introduce herbal and, let's say, essential oil and other interventions. That's where the benefit comes from, because the microbiome helps you deal with parasites, deal with fungal, deal with myco, deal with, viral, bacterial. This is a critical part of what we're missing in the entire ecosystem. So yes, you really want to use these simultaneous to any of our, what we call, antimicrobial type interventions. They work better when the microbiome's healthy. They just absolutely do. So it's key to that success story. Want to hit on that? So I think that wraps it up. We've kept you guys. Thank you again for joining us. And we will answer any more of these questions over the next day or so.
Quick too, a couple of people in there just in the chat have been asking about just certain questions just about trainings and stuff like that. If you guys know who your rep is, just reach out to the rep or call the main line to find out who your rep is, because we can offer any sort of training. The reps will help you out more than you can think. So just, reach out to them. Don't be afraid to get a hold of them.
Yeah. These guys are incredibly educated, talented. They live it. So they'll be able to help you beyond, any average rep, let's just say. So please reach out.
And if you don't know who your rep is, call the main line and they'll help you find out.
Yeah. They will know who they are.
Yeah.
But keep in touch. We'll send out emails.
Yeah.
For the next one. Like I said, we'll answer the questions, mostly be these guys, and then they'll send out an email with your questions that we didn't get to, answer them.
And again, put the word out, because we are going to start actual trainings as well. So as we get into our new facility, we're going to ramp up education, ramp up training. We're now changing into that next generation of business, let's call it. So we're excited. We're going to bring a lot more your way. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you much.
Yep.
Take care, everybody.
See you guys.